The land of Israel was dry, not just in soil but in soul. For 3.5 years not a single drop of rain had fallen. The rivers cracked like broken glass, and the crops withered beneath a merciless sun. But the spiritual drought had lasted even longer. Under the rule of King Ahab and his infamous queen Jezebel, Israel had traded the living God for idols carved by hands, chief among them Baal, the so-called storm god. The people had been led astray, swayed by royal influence and false prophets. And in the shadows of this spiritual decay stood a single man, Elijah the Tishbite, rough-clothed, fierce-eyed, and filled with a fire no drought could quench. Elijah was not just a prophet. He was a living challenge to the corruption of his time. God had kept Elijah hidden during the drought, first by a brook fed by ravens, then in the home of a poor widow in Zarephath where flour and oil miraculously never ran out. But now, the time had come to confront the darkness. Elijah emerged from the wilderness and stood before the king. His voice did not tremble when he said, "Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." This was no polite debate. This was a spiritual duel in broad daylight, a battle not of swords, but of fire and truth. Mount Carmel rose above the surrounding plains like a fortress of stone, its windswept peaks a fitting arena for divine confrontation. People gathered by the thousands, climbing the rocky paths in anticipation of spectacle. On one side stood Elijah, alone. On the other, a horde of prophets in ornate robes, symbols of Baal hanging from their necks. The king and queen watched with guarded interest. This wasn't just about religion, it was about power, influence, and who would control the soul of the nation. Elijah stepped forward and raised his voice for all to hear. "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him." The crowd said nothing. Silence hung like a fog, deep, unsure, afraid. So Elijah proposed a test: 2 bulls, 2 altars, 2 prayers. "You call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God." The people nodded. That was fair. That was clear. The prophets of Baal went first. From morning till noon they danced around their altar, calling out to Baal. "O Baal, answer us," they cried. But the heavens were still. The only fire was the sun blistering their skin. They shouted louder, leapt higher, cutting themselves with swords and spears until their blood flowed. Still nothing. Elijah watched, almost amused. "Shout louder," he mocked. "Surely he's a god. Maybe he's deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and needs to be awakened." The sarcasm cut deeper than any blade. By evening, the prophets collapsed in exhaustion, their voices hoarse, their bodies bruised. The altar remained untouched, the bull unburned. Then Elijah stepped forward, quietly, confidently. He repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been neglected and broken. He took 12 stones, 1 for each tribe of Israel, reminding the people who they truly were, God's covenant people, not Baal's puppets. He dug a trench around the altar, placed the wood, and laid the sacrifice on top. Then, in a move of stunning boldness, he ordered water to be poured over the altar. Once, twice, 3 times, until the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, even the trench, everything was soaked. There could be no trickery, no illusion. If fire fell, it would be a miracle, undeniable and divine. Elijah stood alone before the altar and prayed. No shouting, no theatrics, just a simple, powerful cry. "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant. Answer me, Lord, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God and that you are turning their hearts back again." The wind stilled. Time seemed to pause. And then fire fell from heaven. Not a spark, not a flame, but a roaring, consuming fire that devoured everything. The sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the water. Even the dust was scorched from the ground. The people fell on their faces, trembling and shouting, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" In that moment, doubt died. Baal was exposed as powerless, a fraud, an idol of empty promises. Elijah seized the moment and ordered the prophets of Baal to be taken down to the Kishon Valley. Justice was swift and complete. The spiritual cancer had been cut out in a single day. But Elijah wasn't done. He climbed back to the top of Mount Carmel and bowed low to the ground. While the people still celebrated, Elijah was praying for rain. 7 times he sent his servant to look toward the sea. On the 7th time, a cloud no bigger than a man's hand rose in the distance. Elijah stood and said, "Go tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." And then it came. The sky grew black, the wind rose, and heavy rain fell on the dry earth. Life returned to the land as heaven responded to the prophet's faith. But the story doesn't end there. Jezebel, enraged by the slaughter of her prophets, swore to kill Elijah. The fearless prophet who had just called down fire from heaven fled into the wilderness, broken and afraid. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life." Even the boldest warriors can grow weary. But God was not done with him. He sent an angel with food and water. Then in the quiet of a cave, not with fire or earthquake or storm, but in a still, small voice, God spoke to Elijah and restored him. The showdown on Mount Carmel was more than just an event. It was a revelation. It exposed the emptiness of idols and the power of true faith. Elijah didn't win that day because he was the loudest or the most popular. He won because he stood alone for truth when everyone else bowed to lies. He showed that when you're outnumbered but aligned with God, you're never truly alone. That fire didn't just fall on a sacrifice, it fell on a nation's heart. It burned away the fog of compromise and forced a choice. And sometimes, that's what it takes. A moment of fire to remind people who God really is.